Hey, Talia here, and today on I Got Back Up, I'm joined by David Smith. David underwent surgery in 2010 to remove a tumour inside his spinal cord. However, during surgery number 4, David was left paralysed on his left side. An athlete who won gold for Team GB at the 2012 Paralympics, in 2025, David found out he had 3 tumours inside his brain. However, David's outlook on life is tremendous, and he constantly reminds himself that he can do hard stuff. And guess what? So can you. So, David, when you hear the phrase "I got back up," what does it make you think and feel?
I think it's the power of words, and I think it's probably specific and special to every person who hears it. They probably have their own interpretation of it, and I think the mind is constantly working. The mind, there's always this inner chatter, right, in our brain. Even when we're sitting watching TV or listening to someone speak, there's that inner voice that's just going on non-stop. And I think what I've tried to do over the years is I've tried to silence that voice. Now I can never get rid of it. I don't think even Buddhist monks can get rid of it. So it's always there, and it's like I don't want it stuck on a radio station that I don't want to be listening to. I want it to be in a way that there's silence and space between my thoughts, so I'm more responsive rather than reactive. And I think when someone asks you a question, it's very easy just to go to this reactive moment, because when we're in the moment, our brain is working in a way that it's judgmental, it's judging everything, it's analyzing the space that we're in. Is it safe? What's happening? And then we're jumping to the future of what if this happens? And so we're either thinking of the future or the past, or we're judgmental of the present moment, which then defeats the whole ideology of being where your feet are and being present, because the mere fact that we're trying to fight and wrestle the thoughts in our brain means that we actually miss out on the present moment. So when you ask me that question, I could answer in a reactive way, but as I'm currently trying to work very hard on my own mindfulness and about just having a more of a still mind, I think that sometimes we identify as the waves on the sea, and that can be turmoil, and all our brains can be all over the place, which can cause a lot of anxiety and just unease in ourselves. Where I think that if we identify more as being under the waves and being the sea, where it's actually really still, it's just crazy. You can be on top of the sea where there's like storms, and then if you go down deep enough, it's completely still. That's kind of where I like to be, down in a more of the sea, and I'm in a space that watches my thoughts and my feelings and my emotions. So when you ask the question, and I'm familiar with your story of your leg injury, that it would be easy just to say, well, it's a almost an element of resilience about being able to get back up and go again and go again. And I think for me, I think if I was to unwrap it and go upstream slightly, is to go, who do we show up as daily in our lives? And I think that we've become so detached from the human being and become more human doing, is that so many people are running around on this reactive brain and mind and in human doing mode, that they don't really know their key values, their first principles, their vision in life, their purpose in life, and where all that sort of sits in the jigsaw puzzle of being a human being, that we become human doings. And it's easy just to say, well, it's resilience, just get up and keep going and going and going and just keep going. And if you do that, you'll eventually just burn out. So I think that for me, it's to get back up again is like, well, who do I show up every day as when I open my eyes first thing in the morning? Am I going to get out of bed, be grateful, be joyful, have a zest for life? And then when I leave the house, who is showing up? What David is showing up? And I'm not want to identify as a sportsman or whatever, or a cancer patient or someone with a spinal cord injury. It's like, what values and virtues do I want to live by? And I think if for me, that's the true meaning of getting back up. It's like every day is this fresh start, and that we have this almost this responsibility to tune in to what is our first principles, what are our values, and who do we want to be in this universe and in this world and this planet and in this community and city or wherever we may be. Who do we want to be when we step out into the world?
That's a really fascinating way of putting it. And also, I mean, yes, every day is a brand new day, every day is a brand new start. And we hear that a lot of the time. But the way you just phrase it, I really sat there and I thought, Yeah, he's right. Like every single day is a brand new day to wake up and be the person you want to be. You're right. Live the way you want to live. Even if the physical isn't always necessarily going the exact way you kind of in inverted commas might prefer it to, you still have the choice every single day to wake up and be the person you want. And the way when you talk about reacting, yeah, I think we as human beings, we live in a reactive mode more than we don't. And whether it's from the past, of worries about the future, even things going on in the present, we do end up reacting a lot of the time. And sometimes the things that we react about or the ways we react, we regret much later, or even, 2 seconds later. But there is, yes, finding the space and the breaths and just the pauses in between moments and actually figuring out who you really are beneath everything.
Yeah, there's a story that I find fascinating from Alan Watts, the British philosopher who's long passed now. He was having these conversations like a long time ago, and he was telling the story once about a sunset. And if people sit to watch a sunset tonight, what's one of the first things that most people will do? They'll reach for their phone to take a photo of the sunset. By merely doing that, you're giving up power to not be in the present moment because you're objectifying the present moment. You're saying in your inner chatter, we've got to take a photo of this to post it, to share with people. So the mere fact that your brain and your ego brain and your mind and your chatter has been pulled to the phone to take a photo of the sunset means that you're actually missing out on the present moment and knowing that actually just the awareness of being there is enough. And to have the awareness that if that thought comes into your head, I must take a photo, then to be able to question it, go, why am I taking a photo? Is that not pulling me out of the present moment? And then
Mhm.
I'm objectifying the present moment for another reason to show people on Instagram, to show people on social media, or to capture it on my phone, which is a photo you might never look at again, rather than just being and just feeling. And I think there's a great picture that sums all of this up. It's Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, was at the LeBron James basketball game, and LeBron James was shooting the record to break the most points ever scored. And he's the only person in the picture not on a phone. He's just sitting there and he's living the moment, he's feeling the moment, and he is part of the moment where everyone else is on a phone taking a photo of it.
Yep.
And you could arguably say, well, according to Alan Watts, then they've been pulled out of the present moment to objectify it in an image for whatever reason it may be, but they've actually kind of missed the beauty of the present moment because they weren't really fully in it.
Yeah, no, I completely understand, and obviously there's been so many different places I've been where I can watch things through someone else's phone. I'm like, yeah, sure, like I'll watch through your phone because I mean, and are they watching through their phone? Probably, or it's the phone and the. You're
Yeah,
right. It's not being completely present. But before we obviously move on to your story, I just want to ask on that, do you think a lot of the times then we do it for other people rather than we just do it for ourselves?
I think a combination of things. I think the mind and the brain and the human is such a complex organism of like why are we even here, what are we doing here, it's like it's just such a complex thing that I think that it's being true to yourself and again knowing your values. So I often say if you go onto someone's phone, you'll see exactly what they care about the most. So I have maybe like, I don't know, maybe like 10 selfies on my phone. The rest of it is pictures of mountains and nature, and because that's what I really love. But if you go onto someone's phone and they have 10,000 selfies, then that might be quite worrying of where you're going. And it's not to say anything's right or wrong. We've been given this technology and we've never really been taught how to use it properly or taught how our thoughts, feelings, and emotions become behaviors and becomes our personality and how all that fits into society and how it all works. No one really, there's no real instruction booklet for this or anyone sort of given as a crash course on how to manage it. So I think there's probably an element of that we do it for a bit of an ego boost. gripe with social media is that it shows likes and views. I don't understand why it needs to show likes and views. When I first joined Facebook in 2007, it was literally just about making friends with old friends and maybe sharing some pictures. And it's so far removed from that now that it's just fueled a very narcissistic, egotistic way. But it's also, I've met such great people through social media, and I've built such amazing relationships, and I've also learned a ton of stuff. So I think that why would I post a photo? So I watched the sunset the other night. I took one photo, but watched the sunset for over an hour.
Yeah.
And by watching it, I got to see all the colors, the color of the sky, how it changed, how it was impacting the birds. I noticed the birds changed their tone, different animals became alive where other animals went to sleep. I was fully immersed in the sunset, and I only took one picture, and I've not even looked at that picture, and I've not even posted it. I don't even know why I took it. I thought, well, that's pretty, I'll take it. But that was me getting pulled out, and then I pulled myself back in. So I think it's being true with yourself, and I think that's why sometimes self-reflection can be difficult, because sometimes you find out stuff about yourself that you don't really like. I
Mm.
think certainly when I was a sports person, I was very single-minded. It was very much almost it was very about me as a person, and I didn't like that. I like where I am now and a purpose I have now, but I think it's finding out why. Yeah, why would you post something, and whose benefit is it for? And ultimately, in 100 years from now, no one will even care, and probably no one will even look at your posts because we will all be dead, and the next generation will probably have forgot about us.
Yeah.
So and then that's not to say it in a morbid way. It's just to be realistic about. I live by a philosophy of be where your feet are, and the only thing you can really control is what's happening in the moment, and how we reflect and deal with our thoughts, feelings, and emotions in the moment. And that's given the person your time. So if we're together and we're chatting over a coffee, like I want to be fully with you. I don't want to be taking photos and looking elsewhere, because I'm then not really fully with you, and then we miss this beautiful
Yeah.
time that we've had together.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm just gonna make a note and say my is it my pet peeve? I can't like I Apple Watches when I'm with someone. Look, Apple Watches are great, but when I'm with someone and the notifications and they keep checking, and I'm like, "Hello, am I here, or is the Apple Watch here?"
Yeah. Who am I with? Am I with the Apple Watch and your 500 friends, or are we having a coffee? And I think that's something that I think that we've become more of this human doing, this constant, and it drives me nuts. Like I'm really, like, it really frustrates me when I'm with people and loved ones, and they're constantly attached to technology. I'm like, you know, just put it down for a minute, and they're like, well, I'm working, and I was like, well, yeah, I understand that, but you can't surely be working 20 hours of the day. Like, you know, there needs to be a point where you have boundaries, where you're like, okay, now I'm putting off my phone. Now this is like family time, or you know, like, I'm not going to be working right now. So I think it's for our own health and our own well-being. I think it's super important that people become aware of their relationship with their technology, and use it to their best effect, because it's not going to go away. It's going to exponentially.
Mm,
I'm just back from the UAE, and there was a conference that was pretty much being run by robots. So it's not going anywhere. It's going to
yeah.
become even more. And I think that we have to become emotionally intelligent, that actually relationships and human communication is going to be a really key thing over the next 10 years. So we don't all just become deep solitude introverts that just sit on our own with a phone constantly. I love human communication. I love talking to people. I love being with people. And, you know, I can see the more and more I'm going out, the more that is becoming a really rare commodity.
Well, human interaction, there's nothing quite like it. Seriously, there isn't. Two, three, however many humans together, there is nothing like being physically. I mean, I know this is obviously virtual right now, but even still, being physically talking to with someone, or just even sometimes when you're on the phone, it's still the human interaction of being with people.
Yeah, well, you still get the neurochemistry, right? You still
Yeah.
get the releases of oxytocin, of serotonin. There's all that neurochemicals that are swirling around that just makes you generally feel good. And if your energies and your vibrations match, then there's such a great connection, and you can leave that conversation feeling great. And that's where I say, when I go out in the morning, my only real intention is to not get caught up into a negative spiral of doomsday political conversation, but also to smile at each person I see. And there's a friend of mine who's a psychologist in America, and he put out an animation the other day of this person who it was this, and he every time he walked through somebody, he took a bit of their energy until eventually, by the end of the day, he was all bent over and broken because he had taken a bit of everyone's energy.
Mhm.
And I found that when I came off my flight from Abu Dhabi a couple of days ago, I'd been surrounded by positivity for 4 nights, and everyone was nice, everyone had great energy. And the first person I met was this really grumpy woman from Scotland, and I'm from Scotland. The Scots are usually very hospitable, very friendly and chatty, and she was just like, "This sucks, this is terrible, blah blah blah," and I was like, "Oh no," and I'm like, and I could feel it like
Mhm.
coming onto my cells, and I was like, oh, I don't, yeah, I don't, and I don't. It doesn't say that it's not to be toxic positive, and it's all like, hey, everything's great, but it's just to know that if you live a life of virtues, you bring joy into your life, gratitude into your life, then no matter what you're facing, you can still be happy. And there's a beautiful singer. She appeared on America's Got Talent, and Jane, I can't remember saying, but Jane, but Nightbird was her stage name, and she passed away at 31. But she wrote this song saying "I'm okay," and she sang it on America's Got Talent, and her story went viral all over the world. And I was listening, and she says that don't wait until things are great to be happy. And she had this beautiful smile on her face, and yet she was in the last year of her life. And I just thought, wow, okay, it doesn't get more intense than that. And even today, I was in oncology, and I was looking around oncology, and there was lots of young people, and everyone kind of looked just a bit like, oh, this is getting to me. And it's a hard. There's no coping mechanism when you get diagnosed with cancer. It's not. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But I was sitting there and I'm like, I'm going to smile. I'm going to go in and tell my oncologist that I was riding a camel a few days ago, and I'm not going to let this bring me down. And of course, there'll be moments where, yeah, it sucks. It's not great. And my good friend Chris Hoy has done the same with what he wants to rewrite the narrative for what stage 4 is. That we are all going to die, but the people like Chris and myself and other people I've seen today, okay, maybe we have a better understanding of how that's going to happen. But as I think it was Carl Jung that said, right, that you can't control what happens to you, you can only control how you respond to it. And I think that's such a powerful thing to be able just to have that level of emotional intelligence in your relationship with technology, your human interactions, that you give out a good vibe, a good energy. And that's one thing I've always said, that if my life is cut short by cancer, I want to still laugh and still smile and still joke, and like I don't want to be defined by the illness. I still want to stay true to my strengths and my values and my principles. And humor actually comes out as I was that naughty kid at school that didn't do any work and was always making everyone laugh in the class. But that has taken me through life, and it's allowed me to build really strong relationships and have really good friends. And that became very poignant last October, because I think, probably a day away from dying last October. So that became my biggest takeaway from 2025, was how important friendships and relationships are.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, 100%. The people you surround yourself with, whether your inner or your outer circles, who is around you. But you hit the nail on the head. It's We can't control what happens to us. No, we just can't. But we can control what we do about it, what we do with it, and how we react. And it goes back to what we said at the beginning. It all goes down to how we react to things, and our emotions and our feelings and our thoughts, and yes, how we show up for ourselves as well, how we show up for ourselves and how we react to whatever it is that is going on. And with all of that in mind, then I want you to take us now to wherever you want to start with your story.
Yeah, I think I want to start last October, because that was probably the most powerful moment in my life. I basically have a tumor growing in my spinal cord that's been persistent for 15 years now. I was diagnosed first in 2010. I'd gone through 7 spinal surgeries. In 2016, a surgeon made a catastrophic error in his handling of my medical case and also in the surgery that he conducted in 2016, and that paralyzed me from the neck down on one side. So I lost everything on my left side. I was left with a bit of function in my left leg that I could still ski, I could still cycle, I could still play golf, but very minimal function, and that was because of decisions that he had made and ultimately had gone down the wrong road. Didn't cure the cancer, but just gave me a spinal cord injury. So ultimately, I've now lived. I notice online right now everyone's sharing 2016, and they're showing photos of their life in 2016, which is also going back. It's taking you out of the present moment, and you're
Mm.
like reliving this past memory. And everyone's like, "Oh, 2016, this is what I was doing. This is what I was doing. Look at my life. Look at this. Look at that." And I sat and I thought, well, do I post something? Then I'm like, well, why would I want to post something? 2016 kind of sucked. I spent the whole year in hospital, but I've already told that story. So why would I want to go back and reshare it and be like, hey, look at me, da da da? And I just thought, no, because I'm getting it pulled out of the present moment by doing that. And I'm going to spend 10 minutes doing that post where I'm missing 10 minutes of the current moment, which could be a beautiful moment. I might miss having a beautiful conversation, or I might miss a bird landing on a tree, which is just an ultimate gift, or I might miss the sun, or I might just miss something in the moment. It's just so beautiful. And the reason I say that these things are so beautiful, the most simplest things in life are the most beautiful, and the greatest gift we have been given is life in itself. And we're always searching for the more, what more of this, I want more of that, I need more, and we get caught into the dopamine chase of this chasing for more. And it's not to say don't have goals and intentions, but be mindful and live them properly. And in October, my tumor had metastasized to my brain, and it had left 4 brain tumors. So I didn't know those brain tumors were here. And I was running around. I was in Jamaica, I was in Chamonix, I was in Switzerland, I was playing golf in Scotland, just doing what I love to do. And little did I know that there was a tumor the size of an orange had formed in my left prefrontal cortex, and it was crushing the whole of my brain. It had moved my brain 15 millimeters out of the midline. So I started to notice changes in personality, a little bit disconnected, spending more time on scrolling on phones, which I don't like to do, but I couldn't really hold any focus. I couldn't really talk. And then I went on a bike ride in Switzerland in August, and after the bike ride, I was sick in my bedroom, just vomiting all over the bedroom. The paramedics came out and were like, "Ah, we don't really know what's wrong with you." And the really scary thing is when you have a brain tumor crushing your brain, the first stage is you have headaches,
Mhm.
then you have sickness, then you go into a coma, and then you die. And I had the headaches, I had the sickness, and all I wanted to do was sleep. So I was very lucky that I actually woke up the next morning from that bout. And not only did I wake up, I then went out and walked 5K around a lake, flew home to London, got on a plane, went to Jamaica. And it wasn't until I was in Jamaica, I couldn't really see things. My vision was very blurred, but I still played golf. I played 9 holes of golf before getting on the plane to come home. I came home. I went to Birmingham on the 8th of October. I cannot remember what train station I went to. I can't remember the train. I can't remember anything. Sorry, that was the 7th of October. On the 8th of October, I went out for a coffee in London, and the people I was with were like, you need to go to hospital. You're like really acting strange. So I walked into Chelsea Westminster. I had a scan, and the doctor came in. I can't remember if it was a male doctor, female doctor. I had no memories. All I heard was you have 4 brain tumors. And at that point, my whole cognitive function just switched off. And then I spent the night in Charing Cross having scans, and then the next day on the 9th of October, I was transferred to Queen Square, and I went into an emergency surgery on the 10th of October, basically to save my life. They cut open my skull, a craniotomy, and they pull your forehead off, and then they go in and remove the tumor. And when I woke up from that surgery, I the first experience I had was I thought I'd died, and I was out of my body on the roof looking down at my body lying on a silver tray. And the only time I became conscious was if someone touched me and said, David. And I'd open my eyes and go, oh, this is life. This is okay. I'm still here. And as soon as they let go of my leg, my eyes shut and I was back up on the roof looking down. Now, I don't know if that was the drugs from the anesthetic or was it God or was it a higher power or was it just that I'd had my brain cut open and operated on for 6 hours. I lean on the side of faith that I think that I was almost between life and death, but it wasn't my time. So after a few days in ICU, I was then transferred onto the ward. But for 3 weeks, my brain was stuck in what's known as the default mode network, which is like the daydreaming network when your brain is just chattering away and you're it's a good place to be for creativity. But what I found is I couldn't focus. Then I needed another emergency surgery on the 15th because I had a blockage with my spinal fluid. So they had to drill through my head to release the spinal fluid because if they couldn't do that, then I would have also died from the blockages of the spinal fluid. Those two procedures and then being stuck in this sort of default mode network where my whole life was just getting played back to me. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't sleep. I was just lying there and I was watching my whole life like I was sat in the front row of a cinema, just watching my life being played back to me. I was very mindful of, well, I'm not going to attach myself to those thoughts. Those thoughts are not, that's not who I am. That's just how my life is played. I'm in a cinema, in a space where I'm just watching this getting played back to me. Thankfully, it was all good. I've lived a life that I think that I'm happy the life I've lived. It was all about relationships and friendships. I was fortunate that I won a couple of medals in sport. They never even featured. That didn't even feature. It was all of the memories of growing up in the Highlands of Scotland with my friends, going skiing, playing shinty, doing all these experiences, but sharing it and savoring those moments. So it wasn't like I was having these catastrophic thoughts of, oh my God, like I wish I had a nicer car or wish I had a bigger house. It was none of that stuff. It was all the human connections, which takes us all the way back to what we first said. And I was just happy that I'd kind of lived a life that fulfilled me and gave me purpose and led me to where I was. But that dancing with that death was the biggest teacher. I wouldn't say it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. It absolutely sucked. And I wish I could wake up tomorrow and be tumor free and have my body back and just start all over again. Absolutely 100% would love that. But I can't. And this is my cards and it's my life. And it's my responsibility to live it the way I want to live it as a good human being with good values and good virtues and a purpose where I want to share the hardships of hospital with people to let them see the beauty of the gift that life is.
Mhm.
And I used to spend all of my time climbing, skiing, moving. I never sat still. Now I spend most of my day in a chair sitting. And I've found complete enjoyment and peace by watching a bird land on a tree and just seeing the tree blow in the wind. And that's where I realized that we, as humans, we identify with what we do really quickly. And that can be a really slippery slope. If you lose what you do, then your question is, who am I now? I was a footballer, but now I don't play football anymore. So what am I now? Where rather than seeing yourself as a footballer, it's like, well, who are you as a human being first?
Mhm.
What's your values, your principles? Then what's your vision? Okay, your vision should be something that's greater than yourself. So, okay, and then your goal is, okay, I want to play for England and I want to win Premiership Cups. That's amazing.
Mm.
But your purpose for doing that should be, well, I want to show kids who are born into poverty or don't have much that if you work hard and you're disciplined and your drives are in the right place, look what I've done. You can do the same. And I think there's a beautiful photo of Marcus Rashford on Google Maps as an 11-year-old kid going to football practice. And I hope that he looks at that photo and goes, well, yeah, I was once the 11-year-old kid who had a dream,
Mm-hmm.
and that dream came true. But with that dream, what is my purpose with that dream? What do I want to do with that dream? I don't want to make it just all about me. Look at me. I want to actually make an impact in the world around me to help humans all lift up.
Mm-hmm. And on the way to the dream, who are you becoming? Who are you as a person? You're right. Who do you identify as? Who are you? And
Yeah.
it's everything, it's full circle of everything we're saying. And it's, can you wake up in the morning and can you look in the mirror and can you, putting everything maybe that's going on in your life aside, can you genuinely look in the mirror and say, I'm a good person, or I like myself, or I love myself, or any of those things? And I find it really interesting when you said about how when you know, in your, you know, when you were in hospital, the thoughts that came in were relationships with friends and family and relationships in general. And again, it's a lot of the time, well, I'd say even most of the time, you know, or all the time actually, we, I'm like, I'm about to say, I'm like, no, Talia, when we are around people, whoever they are, we remember them, or you know, at least I do. We remember people for, do they have a good heart? Did
Yeah.
they make me smile? Did they make me laugh? How did they make me feel? It's not about what job they have or how much money they make or what car they drive, because those things can disappear with a flash. And then if they are, as I'm taking it as a person yourself, if that's all you identify as what you do as a job or what car you drive or how much money you have, it can all disappear in seconds. And then who are you left with? You are left with yourself. Do you like yourself or not? And at the end of the day, you know, the one person we are stuck with for the rest of our lives is ourselves. If we don't like who we are, how are we going to like the rest of life? How are we?
Yeah. And it can turn so quickly. And I think the reason I speak about this is because I've lived it. I
Yeah.
did I've when I did a master's in psychology, so I've also studied it, and I have a very small level of academia understanding of it. But the real understanding I have is I've actually lived it. I identified purely as an athlete. That was it. I was wrapped up in being the 6'4", 100-kilo rower. Like everything I did was valued on winning championships, being on the national team, uh, being this strong, powerful guy who was actually at the core probably very insecure and quite probably I'd say arguably say psychologically weak at the core, because I had all these hang-ups about this physical identity that I'd attached myself to, which takes me all the way back to my childhood. And then when I lost that, I was completely lost. And then somebody actually gave me a book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And that was the first book I read, which then stimulated me enough mentally where I thought, you know what, I want to go and read and study philosophy. I want to study psychology. I want to understand the human experience at its core, because I might never move my body again. And this is going to cause a lot of trauma and
Mhm.
a lot of stress to me. So I went off on that journey and started to read more, started to learn more. And okay, it doesn't ease the trauma and the grief of losing like one side of my body. But now I'm like, as a youngster, I was like, well, how big are my arms? I've got my six pack. Yeah, this is all great. Like I'm complete. I don't need anything else. But I was holding on so tight to that. When I lost that, I was like, wow, okay, who am I now? And I remember my psychologist saying, who is David Smith? And I was like, he's an athlete. And he's like, no, you're not.
Mhm.
We need to get beyond this,
Mhm.
or you're never going to heal. And then I understood. I was like, okay, so what is healing to me? What it's okay, I'd love to walk, but that's probably not going to happen unless there's a medical breakthrough in the next few years with spinal cord injury. So how can I find fulfillment and contentment in my life? I realized that okay, I'm not going to be happy 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, because that happiness is an emotion, as is sadness, as is frustration. There will be moments where I get angry, and there's moments where I swear and want to hit a wall because I can't tie my shoelace. Yeah, we all find ourselves there. Yeah.
I had that actually. I in a very different way. I actually know that one, and
Yeah.
I remember that one
Yeah.
very well.
Very clear, right? And that's where some people have seen me, oh, you're so strong. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just human. You don't like I don't post when I'm crying lying on the floor because I've fallen over and broke a rib and I can't tie my shoes and I can't dress myself and I can't get dried. Like that really sucks as a 47-year-old guy who used to purely identify just with the physical being of himself. And then I was like, well, I'm more than the physical being. What's inside? What's inside me? What's driving me? And again, he came back to the relationships and got to humor. I want to make people laugh. I want to make people feel good. I want to make people smile. And like some of the stories in hospital, the dark humor was what got me through the whole long year in hospital. But I was like, okay, I will never wake up and jump out of bed and go for a run again. And that's hard to process for me because I lost the stuff I really love to do. But I was like, but I'm not dead. I'm still alive, I'm still functioning. So I need to find things that are going to fulfill me. And that's where I got very interested in philosophy and psychology and neuroscience to study. Because then I realized, well, if I'm speaking, I can actually help other people. And I thought, wow, what a great thing to be able to help other people who are either facing cancer or are actually facing nothing, just an athlete friend who's about to retire from sport and he's having a mental breakdown or she's having a mental breakdown because they're about to retire. And I'm like, look, it's really not that big a deal. People in India don't know who you are. Actually, it's 50, 60 million people in the UK probably don't know who you are either. So it's not the end of the world if you retire. There's so much more to the world. There's more, unfortunately seen it with Anthea Joshua's crash recently, where people said a lot of his competitors, there's more to life than boxing.
Mhm.
And that's it's a hard time to deliver a message like that. But I understand when I'm lying in a bed and the person in the bed next to me dies, and I'm like, well, my situation sucks, but wow, that guy's just died. I'm still alive. So I've got that choice again, like Carl Jung would say. How do I respond to the choice? Okay, I can have the emotion of anger, frustration, but actually, if I'm searching purely for happiness, which everyone knows, 5 steps to happiness is a killer because you're not going to be happy all the time. It's an emotion. So I like to think, well, how can I become more content? How do I become more content in life? And then contentment will lead ultimately to flourishing.
How do you find just peace? Yes,
Yeah.
it's finding just peace. Um, and I think it's very important to note that it's actually important to feel all your emotions, the negative ones and the
Mhm.
positive ones, because I definitely went through a stage when I was in a very dark negative space where I was almost forcing the positivity. And then if I wasn't positive one day, I'd then get more upset at myself for not being positive. Now I don't. Now I'm just like, whatever. I'm not
I'm
positive today.
curious, how did you come out of that? What did you do to first of all become aware of that you were stuck in a toxic positivity, and then to what did you do to then come out of that and find where you are now?
I don't even know if there's a very good question. I don't even know if I wouldn't say it was one thing and nothing's jumping out to me, but like I love self-help books. I read a lot of them. And they all say a very, very, very similar message, but in a lot of different ways. So it's reading a lot of that. I love to meditate. I love to listen to meditations as well. So it's probably from listening to a lot of different things, reading a lot of different things, but also understanding myself,
Mm.
and understanding my own emotions. And maybe, when I reflect and I look back on the past and things like that. But, you know, if I need a good cry, believe me, oh man, do I have a good cry now? And I don't feel bad about it. I don't, because I also look back and I think what I do as well is I look back on if there is a situation which is bringing me down for whatever it is or it's affecting me, I think about all the other situations in the past that I thought were destroying me and I'm still here. They never destroyed me. And no matter how big or how small, and that's also something really important when you are feeling that. And when I feel that sometimes, yeah, believe me, maybe for a few seconds, I think the world is ending because we all have that for, a little
Yeah.
bit. But then once I get through that and I still feel terrible, don't get me wrong, I'll think, but it's okay because I've got through it. I've got through everything in the past. And I'll get through this one. And I think one thing I've also learned as well is that a lot of the times our, in inverted commas, negative emotions are sometimes also showing us something. Not all the time, but a lot of the time they're showing us something. So if something's deeply upsetting us, why?
Yeah.
There are sometimes situations with like even friends of mine where if I something upsets me, but it wouldn't upset them, I'm like, but how would that not upset you? And they're like, but why does that upset you?
Mhm.
Vice versa, when I'm like, yeah, no, that I'd be fine with that. And they'd be like, that would make me really angry. So again, it looks back on maybe the things that we've gone through in our own pasts, we're
Mhm.
going through, but also just how we react and how we deal with things. And yeah, it's emotions at the end of the day. And we're not all going to feel happy all the time, but we're also not going to all feel sad all the time. And it goes back to finding those really, really small moments in life because believe me, some of those tiny little moments are some of the most beautiful things in the world. This morning I was up early and I was in a car and I remember I was watching the sunrise through the window, that bright sunrise and the mist
Mm.
around the fields where I
Oh,
live.
beautiful, beautiful.
And for that moment, I just looked out the window and it's like if you've seen Pride and Prejudice, it's like that scene in Pride and Prejudice. And I just looked out of the window and I still think about it today. And it's
Yeah.
like those tiny little moments that you do hold on to. You just do.
They're beautiful moments, and actually, I have this thing here, this little sand timer,
Mm,
and I often think the sand in the top is the future, and the sand in the bottom is the past,
mhm,
and the grain that's fallen is the present. And if you try and catch that grain, you're going to lose it because the present moment, every time is just moving so fast. And if we have 86,400 seconds in a day, then it's gone and then it's gone. And you hear, like, I remember when I turned 40, I was like, wow, I remember when I was 21 and now I'm 40 already. I was like, it does go fast. But I mean, the Stoics will tell you that actually we get plenty time on this planet if we get to live the full width of our time. If you're born and you live to 80, I think that's 4,000 weeks of life. And then you have a certain amount of years where you sleep, and then it leaves a certain amount of time to do things you're really passionate about. And that's where I understand that values, virtues, having a vision, being connected to yourself emotionally and emotionally intelligently is so important, because you don't want to waste those seconds just living someone else's vision, someone else's dream, someone else's goal. And I see, a lot of people, and it's not, I'm not going to say to everyone just leave your job, but there's a lot of people who are stuck in jobs or relationships or friendships or just in a place they don't want to be. And it's like in muddy water. If you leave muddy water long enough, it'll become clear. It starts to clear. But if you stir it up, it just stays muddy, and you bring all the stuff to the surface, and it becomes just a bit of a catastrophe. And it's hard to manage those thoughts. And I think that it's important to know that we are not our thoughts. And are we controlling our thoughts, or are the thoughts controlling us?
mhm,
And I think that so many people identify to their inner narrative, not realizing that the inner narrative is, it's not our consciousness. It's just like we're really just spectators of our inner narrative. And what is our inner narrative telling us? What is that self-talk telling us? And I think so many people attach to it like it's the holy grail, but to realize that actually they're just thoughts. And the more meditation you do, the more work you do on yourself mentally, psychologically, you start to be able to separate from those thoughts. And every thought that comes into my mind, I just see it as a cloud. It's just a cloud that's drifting in, and it'll go away. So sometimes when I put my head in the pillow at night, I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to die in a few years' time. Will I get a few years' time yet? Well, maybe not. Maybe my tumor is going to grow so fast that I die this year. Maybe this is my last year. That's a terrible thought pattern to have.
mm,
If if I hadn't done all the work mentally, I wouldn't know how to detach from that thought pattern and just see it as a thought. Now, I can't stop that thought pattern, because it's like if I say, don't think of a pink elephant, you will think of the pink elephant. And so I can't stop it, but I'm aware enough now that when it arises, that I'll just watch it with a sense of awareness, a sense of joy, a sense of calm, and be like, okay, I recognize that thought, but I'm just going to let it drift away, and then I'll bring in, what I bring in is I bring in the nice thoughts. So I remember when I was lying in the UAE in the morning, I could hear the birds. So I just attach to that and I play that back in my mind, that little moment. Nothing grandiose, no big medal ceremony or not like big performance. I just lie in my bed and I take myself back to the moment I was lying in bed in Abu Dhabi and I could hear the birds. And it just gives this massive sense of calm, and it removes me being the waves of the sea, and it brings me back underwater where the fishes are and the coral reef is, and it can be quite calm down there. And but I don't say don't think of those thoughts, because of course I can't control what thoughts come in. But I think that so many people identify with those thoughts, that's a sense of self. This is my identity. This is consistent, because we live in a world full of uncertainty, that we actually want to try and attach yourself to something. So actually the thought stream that's playing in my mind, yeah, that will become my sense of self.
Mhm.
And that is super dangerous, because that could be anything. And I think if you can work on a lot of mindfulness work, it can take you away from identifying purely with your thoughts as fact.
Yeah.
And you see it online. People will literally are willing to die over their opinion, because they think their opinion is the only opinion and it's right, because this is my inner narrative, and they're not willing to see it from, like you said there right now, why is she getting annoyed by this? And
Yeah.
it's all down to perspective and perception of how people's lives are playing out. Because I often think that, okay, our lives are playing out in our mental narrative. So how we are interpreting in the present moment is how our lives are really playing out. So they're playing out in our inner mind inside. So some people can see the weather and go, oh, this is horrible, it's rainy, it's wet, it's disgusting, and they're going to be trapped in more of a negative mindset. Where I could look out and see, wow, rain, beautiful, I'd love to feel the rain touching my skin.
Yeah.
We're not changing anything about the day, just those two different narratives that are playing out inside someone's mind can shift a person's whole life.
Hmm. Hmm. And you're right. That's something that when you asked me that question before, that's something I've learned is that our thoughts are not us. Our
Mm.
thoughts consume us, don't get me wrong, and we think hundreds and millions, and I know there's a figure somewhere of how many thoughts we do think a day,
Yeah,
especially in like a minute.
yeah,
Um, but you're right. Once if you can detach from that thought, or you can catch yourself quick enough before the spiral happens, because oh, once that spiral happens, it's a long route.
yeah,
It really is. And then what happens is I've also learnt this is once you start thinking one negative thought, the brain starts to feel that emotion, and then it will start to trigger more negative thoughts of the similar emotion. So that thing that you were worried about last year, but suddenly you weren't until right now, because it all starts to happen because the brain wants more, 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 more. So it's going to start thinking more, more, more of the negative thoughts. And then that's why you're spiraling about anything and everything that has made you feel bad or that you're worried about. And I learned that. I realized that also, and it's trying to catch yourself. It's trying to catch yourself as well, and going, okay, these are thoughts. Let them think, but let's try and distract myself, or do something different, or listen to music, or just do anything to not let yourself spiral into that thought process. Because yes, once you start to believe your thoughts are all about who you are, especially the negative ones, let's say the things that you maybe in inverted commas don't like what you think about or you don't like about yourself, you identify as that person by those thoughts. And I think in life we can shift identities so many times because, like you said, whether it's a sport and suddenly you're not an athlete anymore, or whether it's a job and you don't have that job anymore, relationship, people identify themselves as a partner and suddenly they haven't got the partner anymore. They're like, well, who am I without the partner? And this can happen so many times throughout our lives. But I think each time that does happen to us, we have the ability to find ourselves
yeah,
that little bit more each time. We have the ability to find ourselves more and more. So when those things will happen in the future, because they are going to happen in the future, there will be job losses or breakups, or they're going to happen. Who are we when those things also happen?
And I think if like I see it all around me, I see it in society all around me, from family to friends to strangers, people who are really struggling, and I'm thinking, wow, like, wow, you're struggling. You have this great life, and but you don't really know who you are. And this is the thing: when you know your values and your first principles, then no matter where you are in life, you always just go to them. Like, so if I just think off the top of my head, humility is important to me, adventurous, fun, humor, perseverance, persistent discipline. They're some things that are really important to me as a first principle. So I'm thinking, no matter what I'm doing in life, I'm going to show up with a level of humility, with a level of humor, with a level of perseverance, with a level of discipline. Now, if I apply those four qualities and principles to whatever I'm doing, then I'm going to ultimately perform at my best.
Mhm.
And then if I'm very clear on my vision and what my passions are and what my loves are, then I can find myself in any one of those areas applying those four principles,
Mhm.
which means that I will always find a level of contentment.
Mhm.
Where if I'm purely searching for the outcome, and that's very processed living, where if I'm searching for, like if I'm playing football and I just want to win the Premiership and my validation will become everything because I win,
Mhm.
then what if I lose? Who am I then? What am I? What am I? And then everyone's targeting me online, giving me horrible abuse and telling me all these horrible things. Well, they're coming from a place of a hurt human being, of a broken human being who feels that they only get satisfaction from abusing somebody else. And because you've been attached to the outcome goal and not process focus led by your principles, then it leaves you very open to those attacks, and then all of a sudden you get a hamstring injury and then your career's cut short, and then it's like, oh my god. And then a cancer diagnosis has come, then a divorce comes, and all these things come. And there's a great psychologist, I think she worked at Harvard, and she said part of living a life full of meaning means that you will suffer.
Mhm.
And because in life is suffering, there's I don't know anybody who's gone through life, and sometimes you'll look from the outside and go, wow, their life looks amazing. But then you get to know them and you find out, oh, well, my wife's died, my husband's died, or all these other catastrophes that have happened. And you're thinking, wow, I had no idea all that had happened to you. But that's on life playing out. And not everyone gets the 4,000 weeks. When I sat in oncology today, there were so many young teenagers in the cancer ward. And it's heartbreaking. And there's old people, young people, there's everybody in there. It doesn't discriminate. and and I'm just thinking, wow, if we know this, why are we not living as better human beings? Why are we not just, and why are they not teaching this in school? I look at sometimes the curriculum and think, well, what are they? They're not really teaching us how to live. We're getting all these great lessons and we become very great on algebra and all of this different stuff, but we're not really taught about how our thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to emotions, emotions lead to behaviors and actions, which consequently then can really make being in a relationship really troubling. Because if we look, I think it was Bruce Lipton's model of development from the age of 0 to 7, we're given our first program from our parents and the people that are around us. So they're putting the first coding into us. And then from 7 to 14, we're influenced by our friends, by our social groups, trying to fit into the tribe, our teachers, and we kind of start to form an identity in that area. And then from sort of 14 to 19, we really solidify that identity. We become the jocks, we become the nerds, we become the goths. Wherever we are, we find ourselves within that social group. There's always a leader telling us that this is what we believe, and then we'll live by the word, we're willing to die by the sword on those beliefs, not facts, just beliefs. Then the prefrontal cortex matures around about 28, 29. Then in our 30s, we're a little bit lost. And amongst all of that, we get into a relationship, we have kids, we're never trying to bring them up. We're also bringing all of this coding, not baggage, we'll call it coding to this other person who's also bringing all their coding. And sometimes it's like trying to merge Apple and Microsoft. It doesn't, it's not going to work. There's all these clashes and arguments, and like I'm arguing, you don't know why we're arguing. We're not getting great sleep and we're not eating properly. We're not getting our movement in. So we become grunt. And all this is going on. This is just life unfolding. Imagine if they actually taught you all of this in school as a module, so you actually understood, because not like an iPhone, we can't just plug ourselves in and get an update. we're trying to work with all of this pre-programmed software. And I know my pre-programmed software is not, it's not great in a relationship. So I have to work with that because I came from a house that was sometimes hostile, where everyone's kicking off and shouting and screaming. So when I get triggered, my go-to is not where I aspire to be. I aspire to be a very calm, Zen-like person, and I can take life-changing surgeries. I can go through the whole cancer thing very calm, very relaxed, but then put me in a triggered situation where somebody dissociates from the moment, it drives me nuts. And I'm like, I become my dad. and I want to be more grounded and more calm and be able to sit and understand your view to the situation, which means I can't be reactive. I need to be reflective and respond. And the best person who's ever said this was Viktor Frankl. There's a stimulus, a space, and a response. And if you can have the space big enough, that's where you can bring your values in. But yet, most of us are just reactive human beings running around on not enough sleep. We're not hydrated. We're full of processed foods. And we're like a stick of dynamite just waiting to explode at the first person who comes in front of us.
Oh man, you're hitting the nail on the head here.
Right, that's my rant.
Oh no, you can react as much as you want here. You know, I just agree with everything you're saying. That's literally what I'm gonna say is I agree with everything you're saying. Mostly because I don't know if I've ever actually shared this with you. I have shared it before, but I when I look back on my accident, so I had my accident at 25 years old, and before my accident, I always used to feel that something major was missing from my life. Major, 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 major. And I couldn't figure out for the life of me what was missing from my life. I couldn't figure it out. Again, and when I look back, in a way of what we've just said, I used to think about, was it more physical things? I used to think, was it a relationship? Was it a job? Was I meant to move country? Was I did all these different things? And a year and a half after my accident, and I still remember the moment to this day. A year and a half after my accident, I realized the thing that was missing from my life was me. I was missing from my own life.
Mm.
And it's exactly the conversation we've had today. Like, whoever I was meant to be, whoever I am, yes, I was her,
Mhm.
but I also wasn't her.
Mm.
And when I look at my accident, I strongly, 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 100% believe I was meant to have it. I was meant to have it.
Yeah.
I obviously had signs before, and I
Mm.
can't tell you what the signs were because I don't know them. But there were obviously signs before that I just wasn't on the right path or the right track. Where I wasn't going to end up who I was, or maybe I was losing myself. I think I was losing myself more and more and more. When I look back in my early 20s, I think I was getting more and more lost. And that's why I believe I was forced to have my accident, because my accident was out of my control. Yes, I lost control of an electric scooter, but I lost control.
Mhm.
I was out of control. I
Yeah.
couldn't control it. So it was out of my control. There we go. And to this day, my accident is and was one of the best things to happen to me.
Yeah.
It's crazy to say, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I don't want anyone to go through any of these things in life,
Yeah.
to have these realizations, to change their lives, to find who they are. But without it, I wouldn't be the girl I am today. And it's only 4.5 years after, but I believe I'm like 4.5 years old again. I
Yeah.
believe I'm on a brand new journey in life.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm loving it. I
Yeah.
am enjoying I'm enjoying finding out about myself, and yeah, I think if I didn't have my accident, I would be a very different person today.
Would you say that you would love to learn the wisdom from the accident, but not have the accident, but have the wisdom that you got without actually having the accident?
Nah. Nah. For some reason, I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Maybe you can tell. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's for my own strength. It's not for anyone else. I think it's for my own strength.
Yeah, it maybe improved your self-efficacy because it maybe proved to you, maybe within when you were lost, you maybe had a lot of bit of doubt about your capabilities, your strengths, and then the accident showed to Talia, look, I can do hard stuff.
Yeah.
Like, because when I first started doing motivational talks, I felt very insecure. I was like, who's going to want to listen to me? And then when I went through, like I'm on surgery 9 now, I've been 15 years in cancer wards and neurosurgery wards, a year and all. I'm like, okay, I can do hard stuff. I
Yeah.
can go into the real darkest of darkest places and come out. So now I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to talk to anyone. I can sit with brain surgeons, I can sit with special forces people, I can sit with top premiership footballers. Okay, I've never played football. I was actually terrible at football, but I can sit and have a conversation
Mm,
with pure authenticity and be like, I know what it's like to do hard stuff.
mm,
And because I've been there, I've had to fight for my life at the edges of death. And of course, I would rather not have been there, but it's actually given me a lot of self-efficacy that I've got the toolkit to be able to help people navigate life because I've lived it. And I remember I spoke to somebody and they were like, well, where did you do your master's? And I was like, why does that matter? Why does it matter where I did my master's? Okay, I didn't go to an Ivy League, not a Harvard, Stanford, MIT guy, but I have lived an experience that was so raw that I believe that I could sit down with a Harvard psychologist and have a very good conversation. I'm not going to tell them stuff they don't know. They're studying at Harvard. They're way smarter than me, but I have lived enough experience, as you did with your injury, that gives you the confidence and the self belief and the self efficacy to be able to sit with some of the greatest minds in the world or greatest performers in the world and be like, yeah, I belong here. And that, like, to have that level of self confidence, it doesn't come easy. It doesn't come easy, and it's like, okay, I can't go and tell anyone Harry Kane how to take a penalty, but I understand the mental and emotional stress that he will go under to do that. And I could sit and have a conversation and be like, well, this is what I did going into surgery. I connected to my breath. If you do a longer exhale and an inhale, you're stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you do inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for eight, you do 3, 4 rounds of that, you're regulating your nervous system. And anyone who says to me that that's not true, I'll tell you it is true because I've used that in the way to anesthetic where I might die. That is a rugged environment. So in all of the stuff that we're facing in life daily, whether it's in the sporting world, people don't genuinely die. The two rugged environments are war zones and in ICU and in surgeries. That's where people can die. So when you're operating and functioning in those environments, you have to stay very calm under pressure and
mm,
to understand what it is to stay calm under pressure and make logical decisions that are going to move the team forward becomes super, super crucial.
mm,
And that's why I love Southgate's book about Dear England. It's such a great book around. As a Scotsman, I was put off with the title, but then when I actually read the book, I was like, wow, this is like
mm,
the ultimate book of leadership and going into different environments and understanding how Sandhurst breeds officers to be able to lead people into war zones where the worst thing that can happen is death, but also a decision can end up in a real catastrophic state. So by you going through your injury, maybe it gave you that self confidence and self belief, or just reassured Talia that, hey, I can do hard stuff and I know where I go after this, that I can handle whatever it is that I'm going to do in life because I proved to myself that I have gone through dark hours, dark times, and I've rebuilt myself
mhm.
to back to who I am today.
I really like that. Thank you. I actually love that. I do. I love that. And you're right, actually, because when you go through those things as well, you're faced with everything. You're faced with insecurities. You're faced with with so many different things. You can hate yourself. You can feel the darkest of darkness and the darkest nights. You have a lack of independence. You are stripped bare.
Yeah.
You can be stripped completely bare. You can have everything taken away from you. You can have every part of you and your life burnt to the ground. You're right. And then, well, you've only got one direction really when you're there, and it
Yeah.
is up.
Yeah.
But how
But
do you?
some people don't, right? Because some people go into victim mode.
Yeah.
Why me? Or the world is happening to, it's called locus of control. The world is happening to me. I have no power or control over all of this. This is, you know, uh, I'm just going to let everything happen to me. And it's like a big tsunami of waves just keep coming. Where you maybe had a warrior mindset of being like, well, okay, what can I do? What can Talia do today that's going to make her better tomorrow?
Mhm.
Okay, maybe that's just I just have to sit up in bed today. That's a win. Then I celebrate the small wins. And eventually it goes to, well, I'm standing on my non-injured leg with 10% of weight on my injured leg. That's a win. Okay, I've just proved to myself that I can hold 10%. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to go to 15%. Then I'm going to go to 20%, eventually until I'm walking out of the hospital.
Yeah.
And each milestone is a win. It's a celebration. Okay, then that kicks in the dopamine pathways. It kicks in all the other neurotransmitters and neurochemicals. But ultimately, it's proven to yourself that you have the ability to deal with hard stuff and that you're a warrior, not a victim, and you don't choose to be a victim. And I think that's so powerful. And I don't know if that's a part of nurture nature or maybe a mixture of both. But I know people in my life who say to me that they're in victim mode, and they're like, there's no way I could get through. Like, I met somebody this year and they're like, I couldn't go through what you go through. How are you happy? I don't understand why you're happy. Like, how are you going through all of this? And I was just like, I have no, I don't know. I don't know where I got the toolkit to do it. I don't know if it's from sport, and maybe we've exposed to karate. I did a lot of martial arts as a kid, and it was a pretty hard dojo I fought in. So if you got punched in the face, there ain't nobody picking you up. You had to get up yourself and go again. So maybe it's sport. Maybe it was the fact I grew up in a little village where it was all about team rather than I don't know. Or maybe I was born with the genetic makeup that meant no matter what was coming my way or our way, we could deal with these things. And then there's other people who can't deal with it. And it's not saying that there's a right and wrong way, but I do believe that to have that built-in warrior mindset will serve will serve you well in life.
Hmm. Hmm. People say to me as well that they could never have gone through what I went through, and I'm mentioning that because you obviously just said that, and I think I think when all you've got is being strong, and you've literally, like I said, you've got nothing else, everything else has been stripped away from you, even yourself has been stripped away from you. When all you've got is some sort of strength,
Mhm.
then that's all you've got. And that is all you hold on to. But yeah, don't get me wrong, I know what it's like to be at rock bottom, and I know the choices.
Yeah,
And the
I think
the hardest choice is deciding you're not going to be a victim and you're going to take that first step. And ironically, that's the hardest choice.
yeah,
So it just is, and I don't know why it is, but it just is. I think when we make a choice to make our lives better, for some reason it is the harder choice,
yeah,
but it's a path that once you start, you don't even realize it, but you actually don't get off of it.
no,
Once you've made the decision, I think it's a decision you make in your life, and life is like, cool,
yeah.
let's do this.
And anything in life that's worth having, you got to work for it.
Yeah.
And I think that the rock bottom, I think it was Epictetus that said, when you're at your lowest, your true character will be revealed. And that true character, I think in our instances, is both this warrior mindset, and we're going to go and work for it and stuff, and we're going to keep pushing. And I think if you go to any football, any kid in the country and say, do you want to play for your country? They'll all say yes. But then you have to tell them what it's going to take, and you'll probably lose about 90% of them, maybe even higher number, because they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to put that amount of work in. What I have to go to bed at 9 o'clock every night and get up at 6 in the morning, eat all these foods and go to do this and be so regimented. Yeah, that's not for me. Like I'm not going to do that. And I've seen it in hospital as well. Who wants to walk? Well, everyone in the spinal hospital wants to walk, but who's going to put all the work in? Who's going to get to the gym first? And that's when it becomes motivation's not enough.
No.
You have to have discipline and you have to have drivers. What's driving you? Like what's genuinely driving you and what's your passion? And that's where I think that the whole core of our conversation is know who you are. Know who you are. Like I have this analogy of a chair, and all four legs have a representation to holding me up above board and then keeping me floating. And the first leg is being in nature. The second leg is doing some form of sport and movement. The third leg is having really moving conversations with great people and friendships. And the fourth leg is, am I making a difference to something greater than myself? So that's my passions in life.
Hmm.
They're built, and I can sit in that chair, and no matter how much, like I got really bad news today. I got told my tumor's grown 30%. But I've come back. I'm in great spirits. I'm in great mood, and I can have a beautiful conversation because I know that this beautiful conversation is hitting leg 3 and leg 4, and that to me is I can withstand today's bad news because I'm like, well, this is still my passion, and I'm living with my values of persistence, of discipline, of focus, of humor, of curiosity, all of these values. Nothing's changed. Like I'm still that person at the core, although I've had bad news. But what could I go into victim mode, come home, start crying, listen to sad music, order a pizza, and then just feel even worse about myself? Where I can actually target some of my passions, being in line with my vision and my goals, in line with my values and my intentions. So I actually feel really good about myself. So in my suffering, and getting closer to my own mortality, I can still live a beautiful life. It can still be beautiful. It can still have these beautiful moments. And then tomorrow I'll wake up and be like, wow, okay, maybe I go play some golf tomorrow. But I've those four legs of my chair. And I often curious if I ask people, what's your four legs of your chair? Like, I don't want to put anyone under pressure, but the more you know that stuff, then you have a toolkit because Dr. Michael Gervais, who's I think is an amazing psychologist, I listen to a lot of his work. He says we can train three things in life. We can train our body,
Hmm.
which some people choose to train and some people don't.
Hmm.
We can train our craft, our technical elements to our craft, and
Hmm.
then we can train our mind.
Hmm.
And if we train all three of those, then we can be truly world class.
Hmm. A strong mind. Well, people think sometimes that just training your body and having a strong body is what keeps you going, but you have to have a strong mind because they correlate, they relate to each other. Healthy mind, healthy body, hopefully healthy body, healthy mind, and they really affect each other. Really, really affect each other. I know
But
firsthand
they're,
they can.
they're all one, right? Because
Yeah,
sometimes you hear people go body and mind.
yeah,
Mind is body, body is mind. And
yeah.
if you think of your eyes are they're attached directly to your spinal cord.
Mm,
So everything you see goes into the optical nerve, and that goes all the way into the brainstem. The brainstem goes into the central nervous column of the spinal cord, and then that branches off with all your peripheral nerves to every part of your body. So everything is just one organism.
mhm. Yeah, it's making me think about. I like to listen to, and I've read a lot about Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he talks a lot about these kind of things. And it also goes back to when you're thinking about or feeling an emotion, then the spiral happens and the different emotions. But it's fascinating. Well, it's like when you have that feeling in your chest. Well, that's from the thought and the emotion that you're having.
Yeah, yeah, and then also that's connected to your vagus nerve, right? The wandering nerve. The vagus nerve is a fascinating thing which is attached to your whole autonomic nervous system, and that's when they say if you have a gut intuition, actually there's more to that because there's more serotonin in the gut than there is the brain, but also the vagus nerve is attached to your stomach. So when you get intuition and that gut feeling, there's actually a lot of science behind that, a lot of neuroscience behind it, that actually that's something you should be very in tune to and listen to. And even when I spoke to my oncologist today, we were speaking about all the symptoms of a drug I'm about to go on to. And I was like, look, I can tell you when my heartbeat raises. I can tell you when my HRV drops. I can tell you when my respiratory rate goes up. I'm so in tune with my body and how it feels on every single level. I can tell you when my toe is in tone. I literally have such a connection to my body, mind, and my soul that I can tell when there's any fluctuations in anything. I can tell when my tumor's growing without a scan because I can feel a slight change in sensations in my body. So I was like, look, I'm super aware of mind, body, and soul.
Mhm. And what are the tools then that you use or did to get there?
I think years of martial arts
Mhm.
was a really important one because that is all about emotional regulation. It's all about breathing. I think I'd gone through a whole life of sport, which taught you had to be emotionally regulated under pressure. So
Yeah.
how do you line up in a world championship final, deliver your best performance, and stay calm and alert? Because the best performances happen when you're calm and alert. They don't happen when you're high anxiety and stressed. And so calm and alert is the ultimate state to be in. And then I was like, well, how do I become calm and alert? And then through years and years of sport and just different sports, from karate to skiing to athletics to rowing to cycling, I put my self in a state where I had to deal with it, but then also going to surgeries, the walk from the hospital room to the surgery door, and you learn from your mistakes. So I'm like, well, what works well when I walk from my hospital bed to the surgery door, knowing that I might die in the surgery? Okay, it's my breathing. And then the first book I read on breathing was James Nestor's book about breathe. And then I dived into Patrick McEwen's Oxygen Advantage, and I did all this research on breathing. And I was like, wow, okay, the quickest way out of my brain, out of my mind, is to focus on my breathing. And then I realized if you ask people to do 10 breaths and not think of anything else bar the breath, it is literally one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because your brain will want to wander. And then the repetition is always coming back to the present moment. It's okay if it wanders, just bring it back to the present moment. And that's the misconception with meditation, is people believe that they have to clear their mind and become almost, but even a Buddhist monk hasn't got a clear mind. So it's the coming back to the moment, coming back to the moment. That's like squats for your legs. That's like squats for your mind. So the more you come back, the stronger you're building those neural pathways. So for me, like you, I dived into reading more about self-help and the horrible word, but then it's like studying the psychology. But then I thought, well, there's one thing studying it, then you have to apply it. And I
Mm.
think it's maybe the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing the subject, wisdom is actually being able to live it and apply it daily. And that takes years. If you think of
Yeah.
self-mastery, self-mastery is a lifetime endeavor. And I think Malcolm Gladwell murdered it when he said 10,000 hours. I think it was a misconception from Erickson's original studies on psychology that it's not 10,000 hours to mastery.
No.
It's like to achieve self-mastery or mastery in any subject is it's a lifetime of work. Like,
Mhm.
I know people that have done karate for 40, 50 years and they're still training, still trying to find the perfect movement, and it doesn't exist. The perfect movement doesn't exist, but you can always try to achieve that level of self-mastery. So the tools that I always go back to is like, well, I need to try and regulate my nervous system. What's the best way to do that? I know that through science, that it's through breath. I know through martial arts it's breath, but I also know through surgeries where I could potentially die that breath is such a powerful tool. And I have a friend who works a lot in the breath world, and he's written a book on it and coaches the England football team and stuff. And I have great conversations with him. And I told him when I came out of my anesthetic after the second surgery, it was the breath. I did an hour of breathing work to regulate my nervous system before they transferred me back up onto the ward. And if I hadn't gone to do the breath work, I would have been stuck in my brain. I would have driven anxiety through the roof. It would have been a catastrophic hour in the recovery room. But I know that the breath works, but it takes discipline, because just sitting doing just doing a basic box breathing exercise, 4 in, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. It can be pretty boring. It's not the most exciting thing. It's not like going and ordering an ice cream and sitting or driving a fast sports car. It can be pretty tedious work. So it takes a lot of discipline to do it. But then I'm like, well, if I attach the discipline to living a better life and a better and another step through mastery, then okay, it's worth the investment. But it does take discipline, and that's where sometimes now everyone's looking for the quick fix. We're looking for the hack. Well, if I just do ice baths, then I'm going to cure everything in the whole world. I was doing ice baths 20 years ago before anyone talked about it, and cold showers and stuff. These are things that have been around for centuries. There's not like a new thing where you have to go and buy a £5,000 ice bath. It's great. I remember training in next to a rugby team, and they used to fill the steeplechase pit with just big blocks of ice, and we'd all sit in there. And that was like 1996. So, and there was people doing it way before that. So, I think, yeah, having the toolkit. If you ask a plumber to come to your house to fix it, he arrives with a toolbox.
Mm.
I think that's where we need to think about what's our toolkit to navigate life, and how do we get the most out of our life.
Mhm. Having the toolkit and knowing that it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, you just said it. Look, trees don't grow overnight. Like
Mm.
nothing happens overnight. And don't beat yourself up about that because, it's you don't go to school or university, let's say, and then, graduate with a degree by the end of the week.
Yeah,
They can be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year courses. And when you think about it like that, it's not going to happen overnight. So if that means you've just started meditating or you've just started reading, I know self-help books or whatever it is that you're doing, you're not going to get better overnight. But what you will see, because I think, it's what I've noticed, is that the more you do it, the more you show up for yourself. The more you do it for yourself over time, believe me, and it can sometimes take a really long time for it to even start to happen. But slowly, slowly, you'll start to notice that you're not reacting to something that you would have done last year, or you're
yeah,
not being triggered by something the same way and you start to see these little things and you kind of scratch your head a bit and you're like, was that me? Like, did I
exactly.
just, did I just like, was I okay with that? And
Yeah,
you start to actually see the practicing and the discipline and everything you're learning start to form. And again, even when you start to see it, you're not going to become a master overnight. No, but slowly, and you'll, go backwards and forwards. And that's okay because it's life.
it's
It's
like,
it's life.
yeah, I don't get it right. I'm 16 years now on this whole cancer journey, and I still don't get it right. There's times where I'm ready to pass out in the nurse's room. I get bad news. The next minute I'm on the bed having my heart rate taken, my blood pressure taken. I'm sweating. I'm all over the place. And I'm like, right, just go to your breathing, David. Go to your breathing. You know that works. So I still don't get it right. I'm still trying to work at this game. And then to be like, okay, there's times I become more reactive because my environment is not the best, and I'm like, oh god, yeah. So I like constantly learning. But I think we live in a world now, and I'll use martial arts as an example, because in the Far East it was seen as an art, not a sport. Originally it started as an art, and to get from white belt to black belt could take years and years of training and studying, and eventually you might get to your black belt if you're lucky. In the West, there's kids at like 8 year old now that are second dan black belts. And I'm like, how's that even possible? Like, how, like, even if you started at one, like it's because they realize that it's a business, so they need people to stay, so they need this constant reward, right? You get your yellow belt, then you get your green belt, then you get your purple belt, then your brown belt, then your black belt, and it's almost like it devalues the black belt. Like, I got my black belt at a young age at 15, but I started karate when I was 7. So, and I trained and I got all my gradings through a Japanese instructor who's now unfortunately passed away. But I graded under the traditional Japan Karate Association's grading system, and I got my black belt, and I was very proud of that. And then I spoke to someone the other day, and they're like, "Yeah, my kid's a third dan." And I was like, "What age is your kid?" They're like, 12. I was like, how can you be a third dan at 12? Like, the third dans that I knew when I was a young kid, they were in their 30s and they'd been studying karate all their life. And so it kind of devalues it all, but then also it's not really training robust human beings, because when that 10-year-old kid who's a third Dan or fourth Dan at 12, they get diagnosed with cancer in their 30s, they don't really have the resilience and the persistence and those key values and traits to then potentially deal with that. It's because they got that instant reward. Everything's instant reward now. I can turn on Netflix. I can press a button and order a pizza. So we've almost become lazy to hard work. And I can see it when I was in Abu Dhabi, they were working 24 hours on the roads, and you can do 12-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, whatever you want to work, but they were working. And the level of work was okay, it can be perceived as different things, but the level of attention to detail and the work ethic was incredible. I come back to the UK, the first thing I hear is a kid say to her dad, "Daddy, why is it so dirty here?" Because the thing they had attached to the plane, no one had taken care of it. It was dirty. And then the airport was kind of dirty. Everyone was a bit run down. And then there's all these roadworks, but no one's really working on the roads. And it's not been negative. It's just saying that especially in the West, we've trained ourselves to become kind of a bit lazy. And if we start karate, we don't want to study for 10 years to get a black belt. We want our black belt in a year. If not, we're going to quit and we're going to leave the dojo, and the instructor doesn't make money, so he doesn't make a career and a living. So he's incentivized now to also give people belts at a really quick rate. And this just plays into everything. And I think that's sometimes the beauty of Olympic sport, because you can't really get an Olympic gold medal or onto an Olympic team without putting in years and years of work. And it's the same as becoming a brain surgeon or a spinal surgeon. You have to put in so much work. And I think that's where I always laugh, because I call them the cancer police. And these are people who have no medical qualification, but will tell you if you take enough turmeric and cinnamon that you'll cure your cancer. And they know that because their cousin cured their stage 4 cancer because they took turmeric and vitamin C. And you see people falling for this and they actually die. There's been documentaries on TV I've watched of people who have refused traditional treatments to go down a treatment that's got no scientific evidence. And I had to say to someone the other day, look, I've got a brain surgeon, a brain oncologist, a spinal surgeon, a professor of spinal surgery, and a professor of oncology. That's all of those is over 100 years of education. So, and you have done a weekend course in personal training. I'm kind of guessing that they probably know more about the subject than you do. And I was trying to say it in the nicest way possible because I knew the person meant well. But I was like, this is not just a weekend course in personal training that's going to qualify you, where the company's incentivized to give you the course so they can make money. These are people that have studied. I mean, to study to be a brain surgeon, my brain surgeon's been studying since the age of 5, because he went through this whole school career, his university career. So I feel that we've almost, like, I really admire hard work and discipline. I think it's the cornerstone of being able to perform at a world-class level. But I think that we're nourishing a society that wants to avoid hard work and discipline.
Yeah, and people just want fast results, quick results, the dopamine rushes, quick, 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 quick. But yeah, you know what? It really is about enjoying the journey. It really is, because those are the things you look back along the way. Those are the moments, those are the memories, those are the things that you feel when you look back on those even the quieter moments sometimes. It's the things that are along the way in our journeys. You said it, we don't always remember those huge, huge, huge wins. Sometimes we remember who was around us during certain things, or specific places we went to with certain people. Those are the kind of things that we remember, how people make us feel. And, like you said, a sunset or sunrise or the bird landing on the tree or your morning coffee. And I know it's a lot easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I know it is.
Yeah.
But
Because we go to human doing rather than human being. And
yeah.
actually, Stu McMillan, who's a friend of mine, who's an athletics coach, he actually also said another thing the other day, rather than human being, it's human becoming, because human being can be a fixed object, but actually it's a human becoming because we're always becoming. We always want to be more. So if humility is important to me, I can't just be humility. I'm always becoming more humble, more. There's always become more grateful. So when you say it doesn't just happen, that's a perfect analogy because it doesn't just happen. We've got to be more. So be more grateful, more joyful, more adventurous, more funny, more disciplined, because we don't just become 100% discipline overnight. So we're always aiming to become more. So I love the analogy of a human becoming. Like, what are we becoming?
Yeah.
We're constantly trying to develop into this what our vision is of this human being that we want to become.
Yeah.
I think that is the great thing with values. Values, unlike goals, goals are a set destination. Values are always evolving and always moving. We don't automatically just become a fully adapted value. I think that's why it's so important. I think any goal that we set in life, that we actually understand our values and first principles. And I'm super curious to how many people, and I never want to put people on the spot because I know how much work I've put into this, and I never ever want to put someone on the spot and say, what's your top three values? And if I could hold like a gun at you and basically say, if you don't tell me your top three values, I'm going to pull the trigger. And for people to be able to actually say, okay, these are my top three values, and this is why they are. And I think if you can get to that level as a human, then you've got the key to the door, and then you can start. Then you open the door, and then there's a whole host of work that comes after that. But that's, I think I would encourage people, if they're listening to this, where do I start? Just start with your top six values, then your top three values, then your number one value. What's your number one value? And they're always changing. It's like walking through the river. You're never walking through the same water twice. So, at one point where one value is maybe super important to you, in 10 years from now, that might have taken a slightly back seat and it's not as important.
Hmm. Well, you are your greatest masterpiece that you'll ever work on. And
Exactly. Absolutely. And as Michelangelo discovered when he made the statue of David, he didn't add to it, he cut away.
mm,
So everyone's looking, well, I need more of this. I need to add more. Then I'll be happy. The next car will make me happy. The next pair of shoes will make me happy. But actually, one of the greatest artists of our life actually cut away from to make the statue of David.
yeah,
So I was actually asking yourself, well, maybe you don't need to add more. Maybe you need to cut away things.
yeah,
Maybe you need less stuff.
yeah,
Stuff always makes me laugh because I've been so close to death so many times, and people are telling me all this stuff and more stuff. I need this, I need that. And I'm thinking, I actually want less stuff. I've actually got myself into a place where all of my worldly possessions fit in one car.
mm,
And it's very therapeutic to know that I that's all I have.
mm. No, I get that. I do. And then just before we wrap up, I
Mhm.
want to ask you then, what advice would you give to somebody who is in a very, very, very dark place, and they don't see any light, any
Mhm.
shining, hope? What would you say to somebody?
Get support. No one does it on their own. British sport always have this analogy of the team behind the team,
Hmm.
and you only see the athlete, but there's a whole team of people to get that athlete on the pitch or to get them on the water or on the bike or whatever it may be. There's a whole host of people that go unrecognized, and it's the same. And just if you're in a really dark place and you're really struggling in life, if you have the resources, find a good therapist. And the thing with therapy is it's all about relationships. 75% of it is based on relationship. And so it's find someone you can connect with,
Hmm.
and then you can start to talk and start to unravel what's where you can improve. Like, I've known people who have really struggled in life, and I'm thinking, wow, actually there's a lot of stuff you could do if you're willing to just remove the ego and just sit with somebody and talk and listen and learn. So I think that, yeah, know your team, know who's around you, who you can lean into. Like I know if I'm struggling, I've got 3 therapists I can go to, and I can just offload. I wouldn't generally offload on my friends because they're my friends. And I actually had to correct one of my friends. He wanted me to offload on him. And I had to say to him, look, because you don't want to enter the drama triangle, because they're sometimes trying to be the rescuer, see you as the victim, and then they become the perpetrator, and it all just doesn't go well. So I actually had to say to him, look, I don't need you to check on me in that sense. You're
Mm,
my friend. Phone me up and talk about all the fun times we've had together. Because if I want to talk about cancer and I want to talk about oncology, I'll go to my oncologist and talk to them.
mm,
And I know people don't mean it in a bad way because like, what happened? What did your oncologist say? What's the plan? What's next? And I was like, look, don't like if I want that conversation, I'll start the conversation, but I don't want to burden you with that. I know that you're my friend. We're going to have fun times. We're going to go and play golf together. And okay, yeah, maybe we'll touch on it and we'll have a little conversation. When I went, me and Chris Hoy were cycling through Cambodia, and we spent times and moments where we spoke about cancer, and then the rest of the time we were just having jokes and having a laugh.
mm,
And so there was moments where it kind of just naturally came up, and there was other times where we just had a laugh. And I think that's so important in life. But if I think yeah, if you're really struggling, if you have the means financially, find a good therapist, because I think having that you can lean into someone and talk to someone who can make sense of all of it is super super important. And if you don't have the resources to find a therapist, find a good friend that can listen, because ultimately we don't want solutions. We just need someone to listen to us
mm,
sometimes. And I think we have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. And I don't really need someone to tell me, well, say 3 things you're grateful for. Do breath work. You need to do this. You need to take that. I was like, I kind of have a rough idea about all of this stuff. I've been doing it for 16 years now, but there's times where I need a hug,
yeah.
or I just need a pat on the back, or I just need a joke, or a bit of crack, as we call it in Scotland, a bit of banter. And genuinely, I just need, and yeah, I need you as a friend.
Mm,
And that's not to come at me with a bunch of solutions that you've read from Betty on Facebook, that
mm,
oranges cure my cancer. You don't know what my cancer is. You don't know the genetics and the biology and the physiology of the tumor. You know, like, trust me, I've done all that research. I just want you to be a friend.
yeah.
And I think that's, if someone's really struggling, it's we're social beings. If you go back all the way 200,000 years, we've always belonged to tribes. It's always, we're very tribal people. We always find that group that, and you see it, and you're involved in football. You've got your West Ham people, your Arsenal people, your Millwall people, your Chelsea people. They belong to this club. And when they put on their shirts and go and stand in the stadium, they have this huge belonging of this, like, yeah, these are my people.
Mm,
And that is super important to have that, and be around that. But I think, yeah, I'm very compassionate and empathetic to people who are going through tough times. Life is not easy. It can be super challenging at times, and it can be very lonely at times. And I think that's why, going back to what we said right at the very start, that if there's ever been a time where human connection is so so important in the lifespan of Homo sapiens, it's probably now more than ever.
mm. Yeah, and just remembering you're never alone. You
Yeah.
might, even if you think you are alone, you are never, ever, ever alone. And there is always someone wanting to help. And like you said, it doesn't even have to be advice. It can literally be a hug.
Yeah.
All it means is just a hug. Yeah, and yeah, you are never, ever, ever alone.
Or
And
just a smile, right?
yeah,
Just a
yeah,
smile. You walk out, if you're listening to this today, go out tomorrow. If you're ordering a coffee, smile and ask how the person is.
yeah,
And just like almost force them to stop in
yeah,
that moment and just be like, hey, how are you today?
yeah.
What's your plans? Like when I got my Uber back from the hospital, today I always have a rule when I get in Ubers never to take my phone out. I always try to have a conversation with the driver. Sometimes it doesn't often work, but
Mm.
most of the time it works. And I have this fascinating conversation with someone from a completely different country. I hear all their life stuff. But today I got in the car and the guy was like, "Hey, what's your plans for tonight?" And I thought, wow, like what a genuinely nice question. And then we had this beautiful conversation for 30 minutes post hospital.
Mm.
And it was just this beautiful conversation about just about life, about his girlfriend was a radiographer at the hospital. So we had this like just this amazing conversation with this complete stranger that I'll probably never ever see ever again. So there was no agenda to the conversation, which was beautiful. It was just a raw conversation with two human beings, which I thought this is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure I've had plenty of those as well. You're right. They're ones you do remember too, and yeah, they are really interesting and really fascinating. And it's just it goes back to like we've said, it's the human interaction, the human connection, and the overarching message is that you do have the ability to do hard stuff. You just do.
And I think we've both proved that to ourselves that we know we can do hard stuff.
Thank you for being here today. Life will knock us down, sometimes hard, and sometimes more than once. And when it feels impossible, know that your story isn't over yet. Sometimes, when everything is falling apart, it's really falling into place. You have the power to rise, to heal, to make magic, and to evolve. And you have the power inside you. We all do. You have the power to get back up.